Good evening, everyone. I said good evening, everyone. Mildly better. Welcome back after the summer break. Did you have a good holiday? Better than I did then. So let's start off by thanking our sponsor as usual tonight. Our sponsor is the Test People. So let's hear thanks very much to the Test People for the beer and the soft drinks and the pizza, of course. So thanks very much. I see some new faces here tonight, so welcome. And I see some regular faces as well, welcome back. And I see some faces I haven't seen for quite a long time here, so welcome back to those guys as well. It's only through the generosity of our sponsors like the Test People that we can have these events and hold them for free. We won't ask you for any money or make you sign a test or give some a DNA or anything like that. So it's completely for free. But if your organisation is interested in sponsoring, we don't mind you standing up here and pitching a tool or a service. Please, no sales pitches though. Come and speak to Claire, wherever she's gone. She's our general herder of cats and all things organisational. Please speak to Claire and she'll make that happen for you. So tonight we've got a quick introduction from Andy Slight, who's just nipped to the little boys' room. Then we've got who remembers Jitesh's talk around mobile testing last year? 1, 2, 3, 4, right, quite a few people. So Jitesh is going to give us an update on that. If you remember, he hit quite a few problems last year, so he's going to give us an update on that. I'm interested in hearing about that. Then we've got a talk from Jordan. Jordan's from the Test People as well. Where are you, Jordan? Nervous yet?
Oh, yeah,
then we'll take a light break. Now, having said that, if you haven't found the toilets yet, the toilet is just past the yellow smeg fridge. If you need to go, just go. Don't put your hand up and wait for me to ask you. It's fine. We're all adults. There's still some pizza and drinks left. Please, I know it gets warm in here. Please keep yourself refreshed. We'll break at some point as well. And then we'll have some lightning talks. As of yet, I haven't got any names in the hat for lightning talks, so if you've got something you want to get off your chest, lightning talk's literally a 5-minute talk. Please come and see me and we can sort that out. We're all friends, we don't bite. And then afterwards, the bit which some people think is the most important bit of the tester gathering is the networking event. And no, it's not about electronics and ones and zeros. Over at the bakery just across the road. Please follow us on Twitter and please give us the feedback in the feedback box. Thank you very much. So without further ado, I introduce Andy from the Test People.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Northwest Testers Gathering. A bit about the Test People. It's not a sales spiel. Test People was formed on the wrong side of the Pennines. So we're based in Leeds, I'm afraid. Don't boo me though, because I'm not from Leeds. I was going to be rude about Yorkshire people, but seeing as most of the people that work for us are from Yorkshire, it's probably not a good idea. So, but it is on the wrong side of the Pennines. However, we are opening an office on the right side of the Pennines. I like this interaction. It's brilliant. Love it. Some more from you would be helpful. Yeah. We're opening an office on the right side of the Pennines imminently, mid-October. Yeah. Contracts are signed, sealed, delivered. Not far from here, 5 minutes walk. 5 minutes walk? Over at Piccadilly. So not quite in the trendy creative area, but over in Piccadilly. We were formed almost 8 years ago. So 3rd of December 27,000. 3rd December 2007. And essentially we were formed to be a technical test consultancy. So what we discovered was we knew a lot of people who were what we call tool jockeys. They could run a tool. They could run Load Runner, for example. Dirty word, I know. They could use a tool, but they didn't really take any overall view of why they were doing this sort of stuff. So we started it in 2007. Since then, we've grown year on year. We now about 170 people with offices in Leeds, boo, yeah, I know. London, how do you feel about London? Do we boo London? I don't know. We definitely boo Leeds, which is good. I enjoy booing Leeds. But London is, southern softies. Leeds and London, and then literally a couple of weeks, Manchester. Then with a bit of luck, Another couple of weeks, Leamington Spa, of all places, because it's Royal Leamington Spa, and we thought that befitted Royal, because it's not really the right audience to be saying that, is it? Should be down with the kids, shouldn't we? Be down in, well, it's Royal Leamington Spa anyway. So, so that's coming. When I wanted support from the audience, I didn't want you to laugh at me like I'm an idiot. So yeah, next couple of weeks we should have, you know, five locations, because there's Leeds, London, Manchester, Leamington Spa, and probably Bristol, Swindon, somewhere like that, somewhere. So we are big supporters of the test community, very, very big supporters of the test community. We host and run and organise the Leeds Testers Gathering. Generally get audiences of a similar size. We have had luminaries like Michael Bolton talk in the past. We attend the London Testers Gathering on a regular basis. We've supported Sheffield, Nottingham. Nottingham. I think I was at the very first Oxford Testers Gathering. It was better than it sounds, honestly. So, you know, we are big supporters of the test community. All things open source and all things agile. We are pretty much against the old traditional methods of doing testing, the old waterfall, throw bodies at it. We're very much into automation, open source and bespoke development. Hopefully you'll say that when Jordan gets up to speak. And I'm not just throwing buzzwords out there. We actively contribute to the open source community. I believe that is correct, isn't it?
Yes, I'll check on my toes.
Sorry, I'll just do a demo of your... no. So we do actually contribute to the open source community, and I believe Jordan has done a couple of commits this very day. So yeah, look out for us. Hopefully you'll see us at this event on a very, very regular basis. Mr. Jones here, who is only in shirt and tie because he has been on client site. He's much hipper and cooler than he looks tonight, honestly. Stuart dresses like this all the time because he's just dull. Okay, anything else? No, great.
Are you recruiting to take staff off the moment?
Sorry?
Are you recruiting to take staff off the moment?
Yeah, loads. Seriously, hundreds. Lots and lots of vacancies. Feel free to visit www.thetestpeople.com. However, our website is a bit dated. The current website is currently in test, but unfortunately I've given it to I personally give it to one of our London-based testers, and she's bloody good. Oh, she's spotting everything. It's just like, I now know what it feels like to be on the other side. So like, I just want to get the thing live. Oh, but you know, this eye, it doesn't quite line up. It's like, nobody's going to notice. And then she reminds me that our audience are likely to be testers. All right, all right, we'll best get it fixed. So, so I'd like to give you a date for when that website is going live, but it all depends on the efficiency of the testing. So yes, lots and lots of vacancies. Please visit thetestpeople.com, and I'll put you in touch with the very lovely Sarah Tulip, who is our head of recruitment. Okay, now can I pass it on to somebody else?
Thank you very much. Andy,
Hello everyone, my name is Joe Gossai. I'm a senior developer in test for the BBC. I work with the mobile platforms teams, so teams such as iPlayer, iPlayer Radio, core engineering, and I also consult around the company with BBC Weather, News, and other teams. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations in test automation that we've faced over the last few years. So, first of all, for anyone that doesn't know what iPlayer is, it's a video on-demand catch-up service. So you can catch up any of the BBC content in the last 30 days. It's available on tablets, connected TVs, responsive web, as well as consoles. So, back in January 2015, we had 315 million daily requests for programs across all our platforms. This broke down to 9 million on games consoles, 44 million on connected TVs or smart TVs, 99 million on responsive web, but we had a staggering 163 daily requests for programs on mobiles and tablets. So it kind of gives you an idea of the size of our product. So today I'm going to be talking about the mobile platforms team, specifically iPlay Mobile. We do native apps for Android and iOS, and we support a range of OSs and devices, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewind about a year ago. This time last year I gave a talk about where we were, and I'm just going to recap on that, and then I'll let you know where we got to since then. So one of the first questions we had to ask is, why are we automating? Well, at the time we were releasing 2 or 3 times a year on Android and iOS, and we were making a few releases every week, which is fine for our testers. They could work with that and keep going. But we decided that actually, you know what, we want to get new features out to our users faster, and new bug fixes out to them a lot quicker than we were in the past. So we thought, what could we do about that? So we decided that we'll start working a lot faster, but we didn't want to just start pushing code to our main trunk and then see if it broke or not. And we didn't want to overwhelm our testers either. So we had to increase our feedback loop. What we wanted to do was when the developers commit a piece of code, they could see straight away whether or not that piece of code worked or not. So at the time, we were doing 2 to 3 releases a week, which was working fine for our testers. But when we got to 10 releases a day, no way was manual testing going to work for us. So we thought, we're going to have to start automating more of this testing. But we didn't want to blindly rush into things. So we thought, let's understand exactly what we're trying to build. So we thought, well, let's use 3 amigos. For those who don't know what that is, it's when you get a developer, a tester, and a product owner all come together and look through a user story. From that, they'll identify the key scenarios that will satisfy that user story. From that, they would then decide what they were going to automate. Now, the great thing about this was everyone in that 3 amigo session fully understood exactly what this feature was meant to do, and the product owner finally understood that his developers and his testers knew what they were up to. That's like he is a he. So we ran 3 amigos, we created a load of scenarios and created what we call, as known in the industry, a feature file. So that naturally led us to, what should we do with this feature file? Well, let's try and automate it. So there was a few tools around at the time, Appium and Calabash. For those who don't know, that's a calabash. Not very clear on there, but that's what it is, it's a vegetable. We had a feature file and we decided that Calabash might be one of our best tools to choose because it will work on both Android and iOS. It was open source, as well as allowing us to test on multiple devices and simulators. So now we decided, we know what the scenarios are, we know what we want to automate, we've got the tool. We then use Cucumber to drive our tests and Ruby to build the tests using the Calabash framework. We're also able to reuse more of the testing on both platforms as well. And we could also transfer knowledge between each of those platforms. So we wanted the developers to build those tests, so to benefit from the faster feedback that they get from it. So to get them going, the developers and testing the team first initially set up the framework, got the page object pattern implemented, as well as creating key scenarios for them to run those tests with. So now we'd run a 3 amigo session. We'd then create a feature file. From that, we'd identify the key scenarios. And then from that, we'd then build our automated tests. If everything went green, we'd then release this product to our testers and our product owner. From that, we'd then push it to our build pipeline, and then we could run those tests on a physical device. We initially started out with 1 device and 1 simulator. A device for Android. Anyone who's ever used the Android SDK would understand that the simulator isn't very great, so we stuck with the device there. But for iOS, the simulator is pretty good, and they run pretty fast. So we stuck with that. And at first, this worked brilliantly. But then we started to realize that, oh, hold on. Our users aren't actually using simulators, and they use more than 1 device. So we started to look at, well, what can we do? How can we scale this up? How can we run these tests on more devices? So we looked at a few hosting solutions, and there was a few at the time. But we realized, well, we've got these drawers full of phones, and they're not doing some things at night. And testers aren't always using them. So what can we do to make use of them? So we tasked our tools and infrastructure team to come up with a solution. They came up with what we call Hive CI. Now, what this will allow us to do is run tests on multiple devices at the same time, and also manage all those tests, allow us to investigate what's wrong with those tests and rerun them if we needed to. But with all these tests, we start getting loads of results, and so we also had to build another tool called test mic. Now this would allow us to actually dig into those results, see what's passing, see what's failing, how is it working across those devices, and just get general trends of what's going on. One of the great things about this is we are planning to open source this tool. It's coming out very soon. Keep an eye on the Twitter feed and also the open source page, where there are numerous other tools that the BBC is now starting to open source. So that's where we were about a year ago. And then as the time went on, the effort to build the tests came down, naturally. And as things went on, the number of tests increased. Kind of understandable. But then also the maintenance efforts started to slowly creep up on us. And this was getting worse and worse for us. So the kind of problems we started to see was every time a new version of iOS came out, it'd break our test frameworks. So all of a sudden we'd have to go back quickly, try and figure out what's going wrong with them. Once we started running tests on lots of different devices, we started to realize that, well, hold on, some devices run a bit slower than others. The screen layouts would be slightly different for each device. So this started to bring in a lot of flakiness into our tests, and we were really starting to struggle at this point. So we thought, okay, we need to do something about this. What can we do? So we thought, right, let's look at the flakiness and let's start from the top and work our way down. One of the things we noticed straight away was that we were making a lot of live calls to our back-end systems. So the first thing we did was we stubbed out the whole of the back-end. So now we're using known data and we can test against that. So it made testing a lot easier. Unfortunately, Calabash can't send test data through the wire, so we had to create our own Wi-Fi network. So that helped with the tests as well. So now we had a stable environment where those tests would run. We also started building up a catalog with known devices and issues that they'd face. So if you started to run a specific test on a certain device, the test would naturally slow down. Or if it was a bigger screen, it would actually look around for a certain feature before it asserted if it was there or not. We also started improving our error messages. So when a test would fail, it wouldn't just go, oh, this wasn't there. It would go, oh, this wasn't there. This was here. Here's a screenshot, as well as dumping out exactly what Calabash could see. So now when a test failed, we can see straight away what was going wrong with that test. So, oh, actually, yes. So one day, late Friday night, one of our devices was playing up a bit. Couldn't understand what was going on, so I thought, I'll go into the Hive CI and have a look at what's going on. Looked at the phone and thought, it's late, my eyes are going weird because the screen looked like it was like bending. Turned it to the side and I thought, oh, it looks like it's delaminating. Couldn't really understand what was going on with that. Didn't think too much of it. Thought I'll sort that out on Monday. Left it in the Hive, went off for the weekend, came back on the Monday. Came in on Monday morning and I was talking to the other guys in the Hive CI team, and Pete, sitting at the back there, I mentioned this to Pete and he said, oh, did you check the battery? I was like, why? Because, you know, they can swell up. I know it's not very clear there, but what had happened was the battery started to expand as it had been plugged in over a long period of time, and eventually it started pushing the screen out, hence the screen started curving. Luckily, this wasn't an actual device, but like the device I was using had a removable cover. We could take the battery out, and yes, indeed, it had actually started to swell. We've seen this across 4 devices in the last year and a half. So if you do have things plugged in for a long time, be careful of this, especially if they're non-removable batteries. So that's how we tackled our maintenance efforts, and this really got our tests considerably more stable. Then we started to look at the number of tests we had. So when we first started out, 10, 20 tests was fine. 1 failed. It's okay, you can investigate that really easily. And you can get it going again, everything's fine. But once you got to 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 150 tests, and 1 test fails, and your whole suite goes red, this isn't working very well. Also, the problem we started to realize was that not everyone in the team knew exactly what were in these tests, as we had so many and they were built by so many different members of the team. And we started to talk to other teams across the BBC, and they were like, well, yeah, you know what, we're kind of suffering from this test bloat as well, and we don't know what to do. So some of us went off and thought, well, okay, maybe we could do something that we call Puma. Puma is an acronym which stands for P, proves core functionality. What is a core thing your application should do? For us, it would be video playback. For a radio team, it's going to be audio playback. For the weather team, getting the weather to the local area. So what is the main thing that your app should do? This is the key test. If this fails, then you might as well forget everything else that you're doing. This is the one thing that has to always pass. Understood by all. The whole team must contribute to these tests. They must all be created as a team together, so that when anyone in that team goes, what are your Puma tests? They can all recite them off by heart. Yes, these are the tests, and we know exactly what they test. And they can also be automated and executed by anyone within that team as well, which is what Hive CI gives us. Mandatory. It has to be a part of your build process pipeline. If it fails, it must stop the build dead and make sure that the whole team then knows about it and that someone should go and do something about this. And last but not least, automated. It's got to give fast feedback on that functionality. If you can, run it in under 5 minutes, at the most 10 minutes, but make sure it runs on representative devices of your end users. So we had our Puma test now, and as teams across the BBC started to implement this, everyone had a really good idea of, we know what these other tests are doing, but we know what the Puma tests are doing. If they're green, we know things are good. So we went off and thought, oh, okay then, well, let's apply this to our phones, because the experience on phones and tablets is slightly different. And we looked at all our other tests and thought, well, could we apply similar ideas across the other tests that we have? So we thought, okay, well, we spoke to the test team and they said, oh, we run release candidate checks for every candidate that we decide that we're going to actually push to the App Store. So we said, well, you know what, we can automate those. Let's create some tests for that. Stats checks. Our app sends a lot of stats. It's difficult to test and we tend to miss things. So we automate all those tests off as well. So now we know that the stats are working for each of our apps. Dailies. Now this is a bit different. Depending on where the developers are working at that point in time, they would build certain tests around that area. So for instance, if they were putting in bug fixes to channels, but actually also working on categories, would have a suite of tests that would only check those areas so that as they're working along, they know that that area that they're working is actually still functioning correctly. We also had live data checks. All these tests run against stub data. And one day what we realized was it worked fine against stub data. As soon as it hit live, bang. So we decided we'll have some live data checks as well. Monkey runs. This is a part of Android only at the moment. A part of the Android SDK is it allows you to send random swipes and taps to the phone. So we have a load of tests running across our apps to check that if you send a load of random stuff to it, will it hold up? And if it does, it fails a test. And then we have our nightlies, tablets and phones. So these are every single one of our tests running every single night. Now this is a dashboard and the color status, green, meaning passed. So as time goes on, if it goes amber, okay, one of your devices failed, but you know what, the rest are probably fine. You can probably leave with that. Monkey runs, oh, that's gone red. Okay, there's probably something gone wrong there. More than one device has failed. You might want to check that out. And blue, oh, it's still running, it's queued up, and it's going to start running soon. So we have this in front of our developers and testers where they work. So they can see the status of the test at any given time. They can just turn around and go, oh, the Pumas have gone red, we should do something about this. This also allows them to click through and retry the test there and then, so they don't have to dig around or mess around. They know what the status of the tests are every time they're there. So we had all these tests. Was it actually helping us? Well, yes and no. The automated tests tested under very narrow circumstances. If under this scenario, under these specific conditions, the test will work fine. But anything outside of it, it didn't know, unless you wrote a test for that. Now, you can't write a test for everything. And so we started to realize that actually, you know what, UI automation isn't testing. It's more about checking. You're checking things are actually working. It's your testers that are actually doing the testing, bringing their creativity, their experience, and their questioning abilities of those scenarios and features that actually test your applications. So what do? We start testing earlier and more often. Whenever the developer's got absolutely anything they can get on their phone, whether it's just a button that does one little thing, we get that to a tester straight away and go, stop playing with this, what feedback can you give us? Are there any issues here? And get those issues in front of our product owner immediately and let him decide whether or not this is an issue or not. Should we investigate more? Should we spend more time here? Do we need to move on to another feature? It's not the tester's responsibility to decide whether something's a bug or not. It's your product owner. He'll tell you or she what the issue is. We also started swarming on tests, as we call it. The idea here is if we're going to make a release and there's a high-risk fix in there or a big feature that's going to affect a lot of users, then everyone in the team downs tools. I'm talking developers, product owners, project managers, everyone gets down, picks up phones and starts testing. This is led by our testers and they decide what devices are tested, what areas they need to focus on and provide support for those people in that team. This really helped us foster an idea that testing is a group responsibility, not for the person with the word test in their name. So, is all this automation helping? Well, what it is giving you is, it's giving you confidence. It's letting you know that nothing obvious is broken. And it's good enough for your testers to actually test. No point in giving them an app that as soon as they hit a button, it crashes. And it lets your product owner know that what you're doing right now isn't actually detrimentally affecting the application. It also helps you test things that could be easily missed. So, for instance, I mentioned about stats testing earlier. It was really tedious for us to test. There was a lot of setup to get testers to test that, and then when they were looking at the data, it's like, what is right here, what is wrong? So we automate those types of tests. Also regulatory information. So for instance, for us, we have parental guidance for certain programs. If that disappeared, that could hurt our brand as well as annoy some parents when their children watch things that they don't want to be watching. It also lets us test other things. So for instance, feature toggles, features that aren't really end user facing, but they're more for the business. So for instance, let's say there was an app in the wild and we needed to kill it for whatever reason, we have testing for that. Forced upgrades, we have testing for that. things that you may not necessarily think of as a day-to-day feature, but actually, these are really important, and they need to be tested. No point in wasting the testers' time. Let's automate that and get the testers involved when they need to be. We also started noticing something else, and that was that the developers in the team had started to become slightly more reliant on the developers and testers in the team. And we couldn't understand why. They were using them more to do the maintenance and more to write the tests as time went on. Not all, but some. So when we started digging into what this was, we realized that there was a slight disjointedness between the production code and the test code. The production code, Android being built in Java and Android Studio, and iOS built in Objective-C and Xcode, but the tests were being built with Cucumber and Ruby. And some of the developers weren't that comfortable with Ruby, so when they were working in their development environment, they had to then leave it, set up all their Ruby gems, and then try and run those tests. So we had the Hive, and they were pushing to that, but they weren't running those tests before they were committing. So they were waiting for the Hive, seeing that it's gone red, and then doing something about it, rather than trying to be a bit more preemptive. So we thought, okay, well, what can we do? So we started thinking, well, what kind of new approach could we take? We decided that we should look at tools that are maybe more in the developer's domain. So what we found was that there were some certain tools out there that would allow us to do this. For Android, you had Espresso and Robotium, both of which were written in Java and will work in Android Studio. We also had KIF. Unfortunately for iOS, there were no official solutions. KIF is Keep It Functional and can be written in Objective-C and will work in Xcode again. We ran some spikes, developers went off, loved it, and said, yes, this is a tool we want to start using. And then this happened. Apple Worldwide Developer Conference, and they announced a new tool called Instruments, the whole new way of writing automated UI tests. So we thought, oh, okay, maybe we should go back, maybe not do KIF, but we could look at Instruments, which is Android's approved way, which will work with Objective-C, Swift, and Xcode 7. And one of the great things here is Swift is a new way that Apple seems to be kind of pushing people into building their apps. So this now allows us to experiment with Swift without having to push that into our production code. So we've got our new ways of writing automated UI tests, but first and foremost, push as much testing as you possibly can to the unit level. Whenever you're building a feature, think, can this be unit tested? If so, fine, unit test it there. If you have to write automated UI tests, then at that point, make that decision to write that test. But always push to the unit level. So we have our Puma test telling us what the core functionality of our app is. We have our integration tests running with Espresso, Robotium, or instrumentation at an integration level. And then our unit tests sitting underneath all of that. Looks familiar? So, do we just dump everything that we've done so far? No, far from it. It's going to take a while for those tools to build up to the levels that our existing tools have. And it also gives us new options. Before, we only had one way of automating. Now we've got 2 or 3 or 4 different ways. And we can use those at different levels when we need them. The one advantage of the old framework was that it allowed our testers to start specifying tests as well and say, actually, I want to write these types of tests. That's fine. You can get involved with the developers and tests. And some testers have started to actually get a little bit more involved in the automation as well and looking at those types of tests. So what did we lose? Well, we lost executable specifications. Unfortunately, the new tools don't work so well with feature files. We also started to realize that the tests very much in the developers world, the testers and BAs are quite excluded from these types of tests. And there was also potential for a fragmentation feature. Before we had our feature files which kind of kept the features for each platform together, and they could potentially diverge at this point. So what we did to overcome this, we carried on running our 3 Amigos sessions. If anything that we did in all of this was 3 Amigos, that was one of the most beneficial things that our teams has ever done. By coming together and talking through exactly what that feature is, everyone finally understood what it is that our product owners actually want and how we're going to go about delivering it, and everyone was involved with it. It wasn't just being subscribed to, this is how you should do it. So we still created scenarios and feature files, and the developers would use them to identify what tests they want to write and whether or not they want to write any additional tests. The testers would also use them to identify any new key test criteria they'd like, and the product owner still finally got that his development team understood what the hell was going on. But first and foremost, the most important thing that we got was the collaborative approach to building the features. This is more important than the tests and even the development work that you do. We need to understand exactly what it is that you're trying to build. So, should all dev teams do this? Well, unfortunately, that really depends on you and your dev team. For our dev team, having the tool in the development environment was more important than having those tests outside of it. But it could be that your developers are more comfortable with Ruby or Cucumber or Calabash or whatever those frameworks are. It could be that your developers may not be writing those tests, and that's a decision that you guys should make. I've spoken to quite a lot of teams across the BBC and outside of the BBC, and one thing I keep realizing is there's no one solution fits all. You've got to work out what it is for your teams that works for them and identify exactly what it is that you want from it. So one last thing. All of this is trying to do one thing. It's trying to catch bugs, issues, behavior that you're not wanting within your applications. It's kind of like we're looking for a cure to all these issues. Now, there's something said about cures, but could we take a more preventative approach to software development? Could we try and stop some of these bugs that you're getting in our code in the first place? We can't stop them all, but we could stop some of them. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into that. But that was my talk. This is where we've been up to the last year, and maybe I'll be back next year to talk to more about you guys. Thank you very much.